words that you have spoken to Travis. We thank you so much for how you have transformed his heart and his mind and his life, and that he is a living testament to you, God. And so would you just soften our hearts to be receptive to what it is that he is going to be sharing with us today, God. Thank you so much for your encouragement that you give us in Matthew 28 to go and to make disciples, and that in the midst of us going, that you will be with us, and that you will lead us, and that we're not alone, God. And so we just thank you for that encouragement. We bless your name, and we bless Travis right now, God, and we thank you so much for the gift that he's been to our ministry and the words that you have placed on his heart for us this morning. It's in your name. Amen. Welcome up, Travis.
Okay, so we're going through this series called Tell Somebody, and today we're talking about sharing your personal story. So I thought I'd start off by sharing a story. So 12 years ago, I'm going through divorce, and during that divorce process, there was a day it just kind of dawned on me, I'm gonna be single again, and I kind of reflected on my single life, pre-marriage, and it was my college years. And if there was a word I can describe that time period, it's reckless. And so I knew I didn't want to go back to that lifestyle. So I started praying to God, just, I become a Christian through my divorce. So I was praying to God, like, I really need something to kind of just spearhead this newfound Christian life, this Christian walk that I'm going on. So I'm here at Cornerstone one day, and I'm coming out of the service, and I walk by the mission booth, and there was this sign that says, Mission Trip to Belize. Now, I had never been on a mission trip ever in my entire life, and I really just felt God calling me to go on this trip. So just out of blind faith, I signed up for this trip to Belize. And really cool, a lot of cool God stories. I became fully funded and got the time off from work, little plug for missions, South Caribbean. And everything worked out, and just had this amazing week in Belize. And we just built houses and worked at an orphanage. And so basically, by the very final night, we decided we were going to put on this huge worship event for the whole village. And so we had one guy that was going to speak, we had a guy that was going to do music, we had some skits. We just had this whole huge lineup of different things to do. And on the day that we were just kind of going through rehearsals, my team leader comes up to me and says, hey Travis, everything is looking great, but we have like this little 10-minute slot that we need to fill. So I was thinking about maybe having somebody share their story, their testimony. I'm sitting there like, that's great. We have a lot of amazing people on our team. This guy, he's got a cool story. And he just looks at me and he's like, I want you to share your story today. He's like, God's been doing all this cool stuff in your life, and I think it's time for you to share your testimony. And of course, I just had like every excuse. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not a public speaker. I stumble when I speak. I've never been on a microphone. And he just like puts his arm on my shoulder and he's like, go for a walk, pray about it, and come back to me and let me know what you think. So, and I did. I went through like this prayer walk of the village, and God just kind of it's time for you to share your story. It's time for you to put yourself out there. And so out of obedience, I agreed to share my story. So I wanted to show a quick picture. This was the little church that we did our worship center, or worship service in. And you can't tell, but there's probably about 100 people on the outside, because you can only get so many people in there. They were all peeking through the windows and everything. But that night was the very first time I shared my story. And so this is a photo of me that night. Yeah. Flip-flops. But, it was just a really powerful night for me. And I wrote down just what I wrote in my journal, just little 2 sentences here. Because tonight I gave my testimony for the first time. I was nervous, and I didn't think I could do it. But I prayed, and God gave me the words that I needed to share. And I felt God telling me this would be the first of many times I would share my story. Which is actually true, because I've actually shared my story in India and Uganda. I've shared it here at YP, and God's really just used my story on many times. And it wasn't the first time. And here I am up here again, doing it again. So God has given us all a unique story. In Great Laurie's book, he says that we all have this common story. So I'm going to just read these off real quick to you guys. We were all in rebellion against God because of our sin. We heard the gospel. We believed in Jesus and turned from our sin. God forgave us of our sins and gave us peace and purpose in life. so that one day we can rejoice in him in heaven. So for those of us that call ourselves believers, we all have this common story. But then we also have this unique story that he has given us that he is meant for us to share to other people. So why do we share our story? Our stories are a powerful bridge to the gospel. It's a great way. Our stories are important because it's a way to share the gospel without sounding very preachy. So and people are just drawn to stories. I don't know if you guys experience it. Sometimes I'm sitting through church and like maybe during a sermon or during a lecture, and my mind starts to wander, and I start thinking about some errands I got to run later, and you just kind of get distracted. And then all of a sudden, somewhere during the middle of that sermon, the preacher will give like a little story, and all of a sudden I'm just drawn right back in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm right back into this thing. So stories just have a way of just bringing us in. So, and then another thing is, people love to argue facts about the Bible. But the great thing about your story is it's your experience in it, and it's hard to argue the facts of your story with people. So, number 2, your story helps find common ground with people. 2 weeks ago, Mike spoke, and he had a great question on his discussion sheet. It went like this. I used to blank, but since I found Christ, I now blank, and you basically fill in the blanks. And this is I really like that statement he put on there. It's very relatable to people. It helps you relate it helps the people relate to what their experience is. In this example, the woman at the well, I was reading this story the other day, and really, her story of just being, she had this reputation in her town, and then she has this encounter with Jesus at the well. And that story it changed her life so much that she went through all the town and just started proclaiming the gospel to everybody. And the Bible records that people actually believe in Christ based off of her story. So it just shows you just the power of how her testimony can be for people, how it can change lives. Many of you are probably like, well, I've never shared my story, and I don't even know how to start doing that. That's where the Bible, I think, is really helpful for us. In Acts 26, it's a whole chapter where Paul shares his testimony. And basically the background story that he's in Caesarea, he's in prison, and he's brought before this high ruler, and he shares his testimony with this high ruler. And so I like this because it's a great template that you can refer to if you've never shared your story. There's a lot of great examples that you can take from. I'm not going to be able to read through the whole thing, so I'm just going to give some highlights from that, some key takeaways that you can use from that story. And I really encourage you guys to go and read Acts 26 if you ever get a chance. But Paul uses like a pre-evangelism strategy. Basically, it just means he knows his audience is they don't know the gospel, so he just gives them like just little nuggets of truths, just to kind of break down some of those walls. And basically the thinking he wants to get his audiences, to get them to the point where they say, I may not believe this, but based off of his testimony, his life, maybe there's something to this gospel. And that's really what you're trying to get your audience to get to. Another thing, he's very selective about what he shares. Paul doesn't just share his whole entire story. He goes through just the high points, the highlights of his story. So you don't want to bore your audience with just a whole, your whole life story. So for me, I'm very picky, choosy, based off of my audience. When I shared my testimony in YP a couple of years ago, I didn't really talk about my divorce. I more went into just that period of isolation I was and how I found this community through isolation. So I'm kind of like, I go by my audience. So just be very selective about what you share. And then last, another thing that he brings up is that as he unfolds his story, Paul, he starts inserting some of the gospel, releasing some of the gospel in the story. So he starts seeing phrases like light from darkness and power over Satan. So as he starts to tell a story, he starts to weave in the gospel a little bit. So that's a great template for you guys to use if you never shared your story. All right, so I got something special planned for you guys. But before I get to it, I just want to touch on these 4 things that Laurie talks about in this book that we're going through for this series. So one thing he talks about is be very accurate when sharing your story. You don't need to add to your story to make it sound cooler or anything like that. Just tell your story the way it unfolded. way back in the day, I was part of the Camber Ministries here, and it's kind of like a young adult college ministry. And I met this girl, and we went to dinner afterwards, and we were sharing each other's stories to each other. And so I went first, and if you guys know my story, there's a lot of hardship in my story. And so I shared my story, and then it was her turn to share her story. And she's just kind of looking at me, and she's just like, well, I don't really have like a cool story like yours. She's like, honestly, I've been a Christian my whole life, and I wait till marriage to have sex, and I've never done drugs or alcohol. So like, my story's like really boring. And my response to her is, I'll never forget, I looked at it and I go, okay. I said, do you know how messed up this world is? And I said, the fact that you've been able to keep yourself pure from all the temptations of the world, so that's a pretty cool story. So don't think that you don't have a story, because that's pretty unique in itself. So we all have a story. Second thing Gregory talks about is don't boast about your past. I remember one time when I was younger, I heard this guy give his testimony. He gets up on the stage. He's like, yeah, I used to do drugs and had a lot of women and partied all, my whole life, but then I gave it all up for God. And I was just sitting there like, all right. Let's just remember that God did the sacrificing for us. We don't sacrifice for God. So we're not here to relive our, talk about our past like with the glory days. So just be real careful about when you share about your past, like how cool it used to be. God sacrificed for us, so we don't have to, have the struggles with shame and guilt and all the things that cause us to engage in those type of activities. Be careful not to use churchy words. Gregory calls us Christianese. Just avoid words like atonement and sanctification and things that people just don't relate to. Just keep your story just very easy and a nice flow, and try to not try to test your Bible knowledge against people. So, and last thing, just remember it's about Him. It's not about you. Yes, you are sharing your unique personal story, but just remember that your story is just a small story in God's big overarching story. So just make sure you have that God perspective when you're sharing your story. So, I got something special planned for you guys. I got a new friend, and I met him on our night hike about 3 years ago. And he was sharing. I caught one of. I was in the back of his car. I carpooled with him. He was sharing his story, and you can come on up, Brett. And I asked him if he could share his story. I hope that his story is just an encouragement to you guys to share your stories. So this is Brett Yazzie. What's up, guys?
Yeah.
We're going to kind of do like a little interview style here, friend day style, Cornerstone friend day style here. But so I want him to get to know some of you, and you guys get to know some of him. A lot of you probably know who he is, but so just tell us some things about yourself, just up till today.
So I was saved September 15th of last year. Best decision I ever made, by far. I grew up kind of Catholic, kind of Native American spiritual type of thing. So I went to church on like events, Christmas, Easter, the typical get the free Easter basket, the free stocking stuff, right? That was kind of like my only real exposure to Jesus. And then growing up Native American, Navajo to be exact. We did a lot of ceremonies and different things with the teepees and the hogans and stuff. So just kind of, I guess, doing that thing because that's who I was, I guess, because of who my parents were and whatnot. I grew up in a little town called Gallup, New Mexico, moved down here to the Phoenix area when I was 10, which I'm really grateful for because there's nothing but a lot of trouble and it's really hard to get out of that place if you try to do it on your own. So came down here, more opportunity. My favorite thing were all the sports teams, all the sports. Got to go to all the sporting events and whatnot. Graduated from high school down here. Went to college. Started living a very worldly life, I guess you could say. Getting exposed to going out with my buddies and partying, drinking, chasing girls and things like that. And that was kind of what consumed me until I met a really amazing girl. And we dated a while, and I guess we'll leave it for our next question.
Okay, yeah. So, what's what
you is over, right?
Yeah. So what led you to the point of considering the message of Jesus? Like, why did you choose to follow Jesus?
So what led me to choosing Jesus was I went through a really hard breakup, and dated a girl for about 4.5 years. Thought this was gonna be the girl I was gonna marry, right? We were living together and had what I thought was everything. Had the nice home, nice car, the dog that greeted me every day I walked through the door. The girlfriend who cooked dinner and had it ready when I got home. Good job. So on and so forth. But there was always something I felt like was missing. And I tried to fill that void with everything you could try to think of. Going out and hanging out with my buddies all the time. The Green Bay Packers, which I really love, but they didn't fill that void. Even they let me down with stuff. Going out with friends, going to the casino, looking for a thrill, whatever that was. Constantly just kind of seeking something that Jesus decides hold in my heart that we can only fill with Jesus. And so spent a lot of time chasing that. It led to a lot of really dumb decisions and me being very selfish in my life, which then affected the one person that meant a whole lot to me in my life at that time. And so she kind of just couldn't do the life that we were living any longer and chose to cut off the arm to save the body, as she likes to say, which I completely don't blame her at all. She's a great girl. I just kind of lost everything, I guess is what I would call that back then. She took everything. She took everything that we worked for together. She took the dog, which is probably the one thing that I miss the most. And I got on my hands and knees on September 15th, the moment that I knew that she was not coming back, that gone meant gone, and gave my life to Christ that night, and that was the first step to the rest of my life.
Was there ever a point in your life where someone shared the gospel to you, but you just weren't ready to receive it?
Yeah, so back April Fool's of 2017, April Fool's, that's how I remember it. I was in the midst of just, my chaotic, reckless life, we called it reckless, of just going out and making dumb decisions with my life. I was driving really fast in my car, and I ended up totaling my car. Flipped it like 8 times. I had no seatbelt, sunroof was open, windows down. Got pulled out of my car with absolutely no scratch on me whatsoever. Have no idea how that happened. Because I've heard of people dying in car accidents from far less wreckage. But yeah, my car was a total crinkled up soda can. Don't know why I was able to walk away from that with absolutely no injuries or anything like that. When that happened, I kind of reevaluated my life a little bit to a point where I didn't consider God or giving up the life that I was living. But when I had met my buddy Ryan, who I had known for like 15 years, he's been saved for 5 years at that point. Introduced me to this life, and it's cool. I start to dab in a little bit, and I start to see the goodness of God and what He can do for you when you start to get in. But I wasn't ready to give up what I thought was a fun life, right? Of going out, partying, drinking, hanging out with my buddies, so on and so forth. I'm thinking, man, if I become Christian, I'm going to go and just stay in my house all day and read the Bible all day, and pray. And who does? That's no fun, right? That whole Jesus life, man, that's not for me yet. I kept saying yet, when in reality I should have realized that my yet almost got taken away. That night when I should have died, and there was a point. Now that I look back at it, if I would have died that night, I would not be able to go to heaven because I had not accepted Jesus in my life the way that I have now, and so that really that plays a big part in me now. Is man, I would not be here, or I would not be in heaven whenever I pass. Because I hadn't done that. I thought good works, and I thought being a good dude and doing nice things for people and whatnot were going to get me there. But now I know the truth, and I know that's not how it works.
So how important have other people been on this newfound faith journey of yours? Like a meeting like this, like how important is this to have as a Christian?
So life isn't meant to be done alone. I definitely can attest to that, man. I love all the people that God has brought into my life. And I'm super grateful for all the people that He's taken out of my life. Not that they're bad people, but he just replaced them with people that are just so much better, more influential, help me grow in my spiritual life. A group like Young Professionals is awesome. It was about, not 3 years ago, like he said, it was about 3 months ago or so we met. I say, man, I've been saying that long, but it's been a while. But, getting involved in a group like this, I've been able to do fun stuff. I go back a little bit to where I mentioned how the God life or the Christian life was going to be no fun. Man, I have never had so much fun in my life. I have never felt so alive in my life than what the things that I get to do with and for Jesus, man. It's incredible. I'm super involved with church, man, since I got saved. Man, I'm just so grateful for God and for Jesus and what He did for me and for all of us here. And for the whole world. They just don't know it yet, some of them anyways. But my journey now is to share the gospel, just love on people, and a ministry like Young Professionals, my Monday night Bible study that I go to with a small group that we serve. My Tuesday night mine, I volunteer and serve with production, work cameras and computer graphics with them. Wednesday night, I catch a service with a bunch of my buddies, about 7 of us. We all church together. That's pretty cool. Thursday night, I go to CSYP and help volunteer with them. We get my breath. So I do a lot. And then I'm also on staff here working with facilities. So that's a part-time gig I do on Saturdays and Sundays. To be able to get paid to be the hand and feet for Jesus is really cool. God has definitely just come tenfold in my life through ministries like Young Professionals, my Bible studies, just people like Laura and Travis and Steph, all these people that put the effort into bringing people like this. They're, I'm definitely thankful for people like them who do all the behind-the-scenes work of running such an awesome place like this, where I can come and kind of meet awesome people and make friends, and yeah.
Well, if you're not Facebook friends, be it, because you definitely get some encouraging words. I smile every time I see your posts. So, just my last question for you: why is it important for us to share our stories when we're talking about this?
Man, so I think it's really important that we share our stories, whether you think it's not important or whether you think it's boring, because there's always somebody out there who can relate. I've learned. I have a story where I guess I kind of got radically saved, a lot of people say, and then I got friends who grew up in the church their whole lives, and sometimes I think, man, I wish I would have got saved sooner, right? Because I would have been able to, I would have saved myself a whole lot of really dumb mistakes, right? But all of that makes me who I am, because I can now go out and share my story at a bar with some dude, say, hey man, I used to be you. I used to sit here and drink my sorrows away. I go down and go to different places, and I just meet random people, and just share all the things that I've gone through. I come from a broken home. My parents weren't financially stable. My dad was an alcoholic. They got divorced when I was 14. They were married for like 19 years. My mom had. So I just come from a diverse background to where I got saved, I believe, when God needed for me to get saved. Because He needed me to go through all the things that I did go through, so that I can now go out and love on people and share the gospel with a ton of people that I feel maybe I wouldn't have been able to get to share the gospel and relate with if I had been saved when I was raised in a church, saved when I was younger. So there is a lot of, man, I wish I could have got saved, or wish I would have got saved sooner, but at the same time, I'm just so grateful that I now can turn all of that life into just sharing and relating with people, so that, they can then say, hey man, the Jesus life isn't as boring as I think I would think it would be, because man, I've never been happier. I've never been healthier, both physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. I've never been more humbled in my life, just to think like I really don't care what anybody thinks about me. At night I go to bed really good, because all I do is kind of just pray and say, God, how did I do today, man? He said, hey, you did pretty good. So that's the only person I really care about. Satisfied now, So I hope you guys don't like me and stuff. It's pretty cool if you do. But the only guy mad is upstairs.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. So you guys all heard Brett's story, and that's what we've been talking about, is sharing your story. So my question for all of you is, what's your story? And if you haven't shared it, what's holding you back? One of the things we're trying to do here is really challenge a lot of you guys to share your stories. So my question is, what has God done for you lately? Some of you have found freedom from like anxiety and shame and guilt, and you've never shared that with people. And there's people in this very room that are struggling with that and that need to hear your story. So we're trying to find some ways here in YP that you guys can practice sharing your stories. And definitely practice writing it down, because you might be in that place one day where you need to share your story on the fly, and you need to be ready for that. So we just came up with some, just 3 practical ways you can do that within this community. Number 1, if you're in one of our life groups, go to your life group leader and say, hey, can I share my story in life group? That's a very safe place for you to do that. You just ask for 10 minutes and say, hey, can I share my story in life group tonight? I've already emailed all the life group leaders and let them know, say, hey, some people will be asking to share their stories. So. Second way we can do it is our blog. We've been promoting this for the past couple of weeks, and maybe you're somebody who's like, I'm just not the upfront person, I'm not good with people. Maybe you're a writer. Write your story. We have an email set up that you can send it to, and just send a few paragraphs. Maybe not even your story, maybe it's like a cool God story going on in your life. While we ask you just put a title on, you can add a photo if you feel like it. And if you're just someone who just wants to send your story, but maybe you want to keep it confidential, just let us know. We'll keep your name off it. Laura's the only one who gets this email. And definitely go to this web address and just read some of the stories on it and just be encouraged by all of it. It's a community blog. It's all of our stories. And then the last thing, I want to invite you guys to come back on October 27th when we close out this series. We're going to have a story sharing panel, very similar to what you just saw right here. And there's going to be about 4 or 5 of you probably sharing your stories up here. And so we have a couple of people already selected, but if you're somebody who's never shared your story publicly, and you're just like, I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to get up front and share my story. I want you to email Laura and say, hey, I want to get on that panel. I want to share my story for the first time in public. So it'll be a nice, safe place to do it. You'll be with other people. I did it a couple of years ago at YP with a couple friends, and it was very easy with having everybody up there with me. So definitely come back for that. But if you're somebody who's interested in that, just let us know. So that's it from me. There's some table discussions for you guys to go through, and then we'll kind of come up and close out after that. So.